The enigma of the Vinland Map's origins is a tale of scholarly excitement, intense debate, and cutting-edge scientific investigation. This mysterious document emerged from the shadows of history in the mid-20th century, promising to rewrite our understanding of pre-Columbian exploration. Its appearance in 1957 was quiet, a transaction between private collectors shrouded in the typical discretion of the rare manuscript trade. The document was bound with a genuine 15th century text, the Speculum Historiale by Vincent of Beauvais, lending it an immediate air of authenticity. This binding suggested the parchment itself was of a similar vintage, a crucial detail for its potential historical significance. It was Yale University that brought the artifact into the global spotlight, acquiring it and announcing its existence to a stunned world in 1965. The announcement was a bombshell, suggesting that Norse explorers had not only reached the Americas, but had also documented their discovery cartographically. The parchment showed a landmass labeled Vinland Insula to the west of Greenland, a stunning feature for a supposedly medieval creation. This depiction seemed to corroborate the epic Vinland sagas, ancient Icelandic texts that described Norse voyages to a new world. If authentic, the document would prove that Europeans knew of the Americas centuries before Christopher Columbus embarked on his famous voyage. The world was captivated by the idea of Vikings as not just raiders, but also as pioneering explorers and cartographers. The implications were enormous, challenging the very narrative of the Age of Discovery and the primacy of Columbus's achievement. However, skepticism began to surface almost immediately among seasoned historians and cartographic experts. Some scholars noted that the depiction of Greenland as a perfectly formed island was suspiciously modern for a 15th century work. Medieval European knowledge of Greenland was typically incomplete, often showing it connected to a larger northern landmass. The clean, precise lines of the coastlines also seemed inconsistent with the more stylistic and often inaccurate works of the period. The debate quickly polarized into two camps, those who believed it was a priceless artifact and those who suspected a clever forgery. The British Museum had, in fact, been offered the document before Yale, but declined the purchase, harboring its own private doubts. This prior rejection added another layer of intrigue to the unfolding story of the controversial parchment. The discovery of the Norse settlement at Lossel Meadows in Newfoundland in 1960 provided a fascinating backdrop to the debate. This archaeological find proved conclusively that Vikings had indeed reached North America around the year 1000. For some, this physical evidence made the existence of a corresponding document seem more plausible. For others, the archaeological proof was entirely separate from the question of the parchment's own material authenticity. The controversy demanded a more definitive, scientific approach to resolve the conflicting opinions. In the early 1970s, the first major scientific analysis was undertaken by the Max Krohn Research Institute. Walter Max Krohn, a renowned microanalyst, was tasked with examining the ink used on the parchment. His team used polarized light microscopy to study the composition of the ink particles. The analysis revealed the presence of analyses, a specific crystalline form of titanium dioxide, in the yellowish ink lines. This discovery was a critical blow to the document's claim of medieval origin. The commercial manufacturing process for this form of anatase pigment was not developed until the 1920s. It was highly improbable, if not impossible, for a 15th century scribe to have used such a material. Macron confidently declared the document a forgery based on this anachronistic chemical evidence. However, the debate did not end there. Proponents of the document's authenticity mounted a counter-offensive. They argued that trace amounts of titanium could exist naturally in the ingredients used to make medieval ink. Some suggested that the anatase could have formed over centuries through a natural aging process. The scholarly world remained divided for decades, with compelling arguments on both sides. The parchment became a symbol of the limits of historical analysis and the complexities of scientific evidence. New technologies and analytical methods were needed to break the long-standing stalemate. The turn of the 21st century brought with it a new wave of non-destructive analytical techniques. In 2018, Yale University initiated a comprehensive, multidisciplinary re-examination of the artifact. This new project would employ the most advanced technology available to finally settle the question. Researchers used X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to analyze the elemental composition of the entire document. This method allowed them to scan the whole parchment without damaging it in any way. The results were unequivocal and confirmed Macron's earlier findings on a massive scale. Titanium compounds were not just present in isolated spots. They were found in all the ink lines. Furthermore, the analysis revealed the presence of barium sulfate, a compound often used with titanium dioxide in modern pigments. This specific combination of titanium and barium was a hallmark of industrial pigments produced after 1923. The scientific evidence was now overwhelming, pointing directly to a 20th century creation. The Yale team also uncovered evidence of a deliberate attempt to deceive. They analyzed an inscription on the back of the parchment, a binder's note for the Speculum Historiae. Analysis showed that this authentic medieval note had been overwritten with modern ink. This act of over-inking was a clear attempt to make the entire document, including the drawing, appear to be part of the 15th century volume. It was the smoking gun that proved not just forgery, but conscious, intentional fraud. In September 2021, Yale University officially announced that the Vinland Map is, without a doubt, a fake. The curator of early books and manuscripts stated that there was no reasonable doubt remaining. The decades-long controversy had finally been put to rest by definitive scientific proof. The enigma of its origin was solved, but a new mystery emerged. Who was the forger? The identity of the skilled individual who created this elaborate deception remains unknown. Speculation abounds regarding the forger's motives, which could have been financial, academic, or even political. Was it created to make money from an unsuspecting collector? Was it an academic prank designed to fool the experts? Or did it have a deeper, perhaps nationalistic, purpose to promote a particular historical narrative? The forger must have been incredibly skilled, possessing deep knowledge of medieval manuscripts and modern chemistry. They successfully sourced genuine 15th century parchment, which is not an easy task. The wormholes on the parchment even aligned perfectly with the wormholes in the Speculum Historiae it was bound with. This detail suggests the forger used a blank end leaf from the original medieval volume itself. The creation was an act of profound expertise and meticulous, prescient deception. Despite being a forgery, the artifact remains a significant object of study. It serves as a powerful case study in the history of science and the art of forgery. It highlights the importance of rigorous, repeatable scientific testing in authenticating historical artifacts. The story demonstrates how even the most esteemed institutions can be challenged by a sufficiently clever fake. It also reveals the deep human desire to believe in stories that reshape our understanding of the past. The allure of a Viking map was so powerful that it sustained belief for over half a century, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. The journey of this parchment from celebrated treasure to confirmed fake is a dramatic tale of historical detective work. It is a story where the heroes are not explorers on the high seas, but scientists in the laboratory. Their tools were not astrolabes and compasses, but spectrometers and microscopes. Final verdict closes one chapter of the saga, the question of authenticity. But it opens another, more mysterious chapter, the search for the forger's identity. That secret, for now, remains locked away a final puzzle for historians and investigators to solve. The parchment itself, now stripped of its historical claim, has a new identity. It is no longer a window into the 15th century, but a reflection of the 20th. It tells us about the ambitions, skills, and deceptions of the modern era that created it. The great enigma is not what it shows, but why it was made. And so, the artifact continues to fascinate, not for the history it failed to represent, but for the history it successfully created. The initial analysis in the 1970s was a lonely battle for Walter Macron. His conclusions were fiercely contested by many in the historical and academic communities. Some scholars proposed complex chemical reactions that could have created the anatase naturally. The idea of a proto-anatase in medieval inks was floated as a possible explanation. For years, the scientific evidence was portrayed as ambiguous or open to interpretation. This allowed the belief in the document's authenticity to persist among its dedicated supporters. The parchment was even subjected to radiocarbon dating in the 1990s. But the results dated the parchment itself to approximately 1434, plus or minus 11 years. This finding seemed to be a major victory for the proponents of authenticity. However, forgers are known to use genuine period materials for their creations. Dating the parchment only proved the age of the sheepskin, not the age of the ink upon it. This crucial distinction was at the heart of the continuing scientific debate. The 2021 study's use of Raman spectroscopy was a significant technological leap forward. This technique could identify the specific molecular structure of the ink's components without any doubt. It moved the analysis from elemental composition to precise molecular identification. The forger's choice of a 1920s-era pigment was ultimately their undoing. Had they used a simpler, purely iron-based ink, the forgery might never have been unmasked. The desire for a specific yellowish, aged look likely led them to the modern pigment. This aesthetic choice created a chemical fingerprint that was impossible to hide from modern science. The story also involves a cast of fascinating characters, from dealers to scholars. Laurens Witten, the book dealer who sold the parchment to Yale, always maintained his belief in its authenticity. The provenance he provided for the document was always vague and unverified. The true origin before its appearance in 1957 is a complete black hole. This lack of a clear history, or provenance, was a major red flag for many experts from the very beginning. The forger likely counted on the excitement of the discovery to overshadow these concerns. For a time, their gamble paid off spectacularly. The artifact became a cultural touchstone, featured in books, documentaries, and endless articles. Its narrative was compelling, a story of underdog explorers beating the establishment. The confirmation of the forgery forces a reevaluation of all that secondary literature. It's a reminder that history is not static, but constantly being revised by new evidence. The parchment's lines, once seen as tracing the shores of a new world, now trace the outlines of a grand deception. The ink contains the ghost of a 20th century factory, not a 15th century monastery. The silence of the forger is perhaps the most intriguing part of the story today. Did they live to see the global phenomenon their creation became? Did they feel pride, amusement, or perhaps regret? Whoever they were, they created one of the most successful and intellectually stimulating forgeries of all time. The artifact is a testament to the fact that a good story can sometimes be more powerful than the truth. Ultimately, the truth was revealed not by a single eureka moment, but by the slow, steady accumulation of scientific data. Each new analysis added another layer of certainty, another nail in the coffin of authenticity. The iron gall ink of the authentic Speculum Historiale provided a perfect control sample. When analyzed, The genuine medieval ink showed no traces of the titanium compounds. This direct comparison made the presence of modern pigments in the drawing's ink undeniable. The forgers' attempt to bind their work with a real medieval text was both clever and their ultimate downfall. It provided the perfect before and after for scientific comparison, all in one package. The legacy of the artifact is now one of caution and critical inquiry. It teaches us to question extraordinary claims, even when they come from trusted sources. The desire for a simple, heroic past is powerful, but the past is rarely simple. The real story of Norse exploration, written in soil and sagas, remains as compelling as ever. The forged parchment, in the end, is just a footnote to that much grander, truer story.